Hello Year 7. From today we're going to be looking at Geoffrey Chaucer. So we've moved on from the Bible stories to a different scheme of work. Geoffrey Chaucer was considered to be probably the greatest poet of the Middle Ages, and he's known as the father of English literature. So this is what we're going to be focusing on now. Okay, so let's have a look at your keywords. So we've got nobility, which means goodness or honour, and to be a member of the nobility is to belong to the aristocracy or the ruling class. So I'm assuming you have your paper and something to write with. What I would like you to do is look at the question. So what traits would you associate with somebody from the nobility? So stop the recording now, please, and write down your answer. Your second key piece of vocabulary is conquer. Let's have a look. So if you want to jot down the meaning, conquer means to overcome and take control of a place or people by military force. Okay, so there's your meaning. So let's have a look at your question. What can you remember about the way the Vikings tried to conquer Britain? So I'd like you to stop the video now, please, and write down your answer. If you want to aim higher, have a look at the other question. So when the Romans conquered Britain, can you remember any of the influences they had on British culture? So stop the recording now and write down your answer. Okay, the Romans, obviously, they had quite an impact on our country. Even simple things like fast food, because they had a lot of soldiers based around the country. They needed access to convenient food, so they were one of the first people that sort of brought this sort of street food in. Plumbing and sanitation. So if you've got any of those, that's brilliant. And also roads. They're very well known for their roads, which are very wide and very straight. Okay, let's have a look at your knowledge goal. You're going to be able to explain the context behind the Canterbury Tales. So you're going to be looking at some of the things that have happened in our country. So your steps to success are to look at the timeline of the historical events that led up to the time Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales, and how this links back to your previous study of the Greeks, Romans and the Vikings. Okay. Now have a look at this over here. So what do you know about the Celts, the Anglo Saxons, the Vikings and the medieval times? And if you want to challenge yourself, what do you know about the Normans and William the Conqueror? So I'd like you to stop the video now, please, and write down anything that you can remember or anything that you know. And hopefully we're going to be adding to that knowledge. Okay, next what I want you to do is, on your piece of paper, you're going to create a timeline of the early stages of history of English. Okay, so look at that diagram on the screen. It's just a line with the two boxes, one at each end, one with 1200 BC and the other one was 1492 AD. So what you're going to do is you're going to be plotting the events or the people that came to our country or invaded our country on that timeline. Okay, let's have a look. So we got the Celts. So this will need to go to the beginning of your timeline. So it's from 1200 BC to 12 BC. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Now with each of these that I'm going to be showing you, you will have a short video to watch. With the Celts, there's just one short clip and your teacher will send you around the links. Okay, so the Celts, from around 750 BC to 12 BC, the Celts were the most powerful people in Central and Northern Europe. The period of time in Britain immediately before the Roman period is known as the Iron Age. The name Iron Age comes from the discovery of a new metal called iron. The Celts found out how to make iron tools and weapons. So as I said, you need to click on the link that your teacher will send you and make yourself some notes about what you learn, and or what in addition that you've learned to what you already know about the Celts. So stop the recording now, please. Next, we've got the Anglo Saxons. They came about 1000 AD. So think about where you're going to plot this on your timeline. So the Christians in Rome thought that England, or land of the angels, was full of angels. So moved over to investigate, but it's full of the angles. And obviously got a bit mixed up with the angles and your angels, which some people tend to do in maths as well. They brought with them their religion, which was Christianity, as well as a huge bank of Latin words. Now, some of the words that you might be familiar with that they've sort of introduced to us are things like dusk, hammer, and laugh. All right. So remember, plot that on your timeline. So if you stop the video recording in a second and add that on your timeline where they are introduced. And also there are 2 short clips that you need to watch for the Anglo Saxons, and make yourself some notes, please. Your next one is the Vikings. Now the Vikings were around 798 to 1066 AD. So they're from Denmark and Norway, and they attacked Britain and took over. As it says there are about 900 words that were introduced to the English language, and we still use them today. So from the Vikings, we've got words like ransack, which means to search a house. Husband is another one you might be surprised to hear. That's what we call a portmanteau word. It's 2 words that came together from their language. I can't remember what they were in their language, but it actually means husband, a house occupier. Okay, so that's where the words come from. Your next one that you're going to be plotting on your timeline are the Normans. So, oh, excuse me. So the Normans, they were the Battle of Hastings in 1066 AD. So plot that onto your timeline, please. We have to stop the video. They led to the Norman takeover of England. The Normans spoke Latin and French, but had to learn English to communicate with the Britons and vice versa. So again, we've got lots of French words that are introduced into our language. So our language is a mixture of lots of other languages. And again, as it says, inevitably more words were added. So for the Norman words, we got words like custard, mutton, which comes from the French word mouton, and pork. Okay, so that's their gift to us. So if you stop this recording, because you've got one video that you need to watch, and make yourself some notes. Then we've got the Middle Ages that you're going to need to plot on your timeline. That was around 470 to 1492 AD, so it's going to be to the right-hand side of your timeline. The Middle Ages were a very interesting time. It came about after the collapse of the Roman Empire. Different leaders tried their best to create their own empires, which didn't last. As you read more about this period in the stories we go through in class or on these lessons online, you'll discover many different things like the noble class, King John, and the plague or the Black Death. And you've probably heard about that. It killed many, many people. Okay. So there's 2 videos that you're going to need to watch. So once you've plotted this on your timeline, if you stop the video or this recording and watch the 2 clips that you've been sent by your teacher. Okay, the Middle Ages. Now this is Geoffrey Chaucer. As I said, is known as the father of English literature. He wrote something called the Canterbury Tales, and the first English press was set up about this time. Now the printing press was introduced over here by someone called William Caxton in the 15th century. Okay, and what it did, the printing press, it enabled people to share information quickly. Okay, it was also the printing press. It was also responsible for the English language becoming more standard, as around the country there was a lot of dialect dialect, it can almost sound like a completely different language in some areas. So the printing press, what that did, it made the language become universal, okay? And it actually marks the development of English as a national, and as we know today, an international language. So it was a very important point, because going around the country, you might not be able to understand what other people are saying because of their dialects, and because of, you know, the word, for example, for bread could be different in all different areas of England. But the printing press made the language standard, so we all ended up speaking the same. However, although the printed books could reach a wider audience, they were still a luxury, and you know, they were quite expensive, and therefore only really available to wealthy people. Okay, so that was an issue. Geoffrey Chaucer, we are going to be learning about him. As I said before, that what he was famous for was the Canterbury Tales, which is about a pilgrimage from London to Canterbury. Okay, so now you're going to be doing a quiz. Now, if you leave the questions on the screen, I'd like you to stop the recording and answer these 6 questions, please. So we got, who were the Celts? What was the Iron Age? Where did the Vikings come from? When was the Battle of Hastings? Who won the Battle of Hastings? And what dates make up the Middle Ages? So I'd like you to stop the recording now, please, and write down your answer. Okay, if you can mark your answers for me, please. No cheating, I'm sure you won't. Okay, there's your answers, so you mark them for me. And finally, let's have a look at your final feedback. So we've got your keywords, which are nobility and conquer. So nobility. Why do you think the nobility would have a higher quality and greater range of language from the peasants? So the peasants are the poor people. So stop the recording and write down your answer. Conquer. How did the fact that Britain was conquered by so many different countries help develop our language?